Welcome on into the Wolverine TV. Clayton Safey here with EJ Holland. Month of October is behind us. November 1 marked our start with the On3 network over at thewolverine.com. You can join for all of our premium access for just $1 for an entire year. So literally nothing, basically, for an entire year. If you DM EJ, he'll Venmo you the dollar. I don't know if he signs off on that or not, but go ahead and try at least. That's worth a shot. But yeah, the month of October is behind us. We'll talk about the five biggest takeaways in Michigan football recruiting from the month. And EJ, starting with Damani Dent, who's standing there in the picture, safety out of the Jacksonville area, decides to make his pledge to the Wolverines. It's been a few weeks here since Michigan got a pledge, but Damani Dent deciding to join the fold.
Yeah, Dent is a guy that they prioritized at the safety position. Ron Bellamy, George Hilo did a really excellent job of recruiting him. Bellamy built a strong relationship over the course of just a few weeks. George Hilo has really strong Jacksonville ties. And so Michigan was able to beat out Oregon for his services. As far as what they're getting in a player, Dent is a long, athletic safety that loves to come up in the box and smack people. He's still very raw. Just from a coverage standpoint, but he has really great natural instincts. So there's a lot to work with. I think he's going to continue to add weight in the Michigan strength and conditioning program. From talking to Michigan sources, they see him as a Rod Moore type of prospect. From evaluating Rod Moore last cycle, I can say I agree with that evaluation. I had a chance to see Dent live in the offseason at a 7-on-7 tournament. And at the time, he actually had no offers, and he really caught my attention just with that upside. And so right now he's just a 3-star prospect, but that ceiling is extremely high. And Mike McDonald feels like there's a lot to work with there, and that Michigan can maximize the talent. He was kind of a guy that flew under the radar for quite a long time in his recruitment. Like I said, when I saw him in the offseason, he had no offers. He blew up after really impressing at an Oregon summer camp. And it was just a fantastic job by Michigan being able to come in after Oregon and beat out the Ducks in this recruitment.
And man, you make the Rod Moore comparison, and other people making it as well. Rod Moore's in the 2 deep right now for Michigan as a true freshman, being a 3-star recruit out of Ohio. So there's potential there for, that comparison should not be taken lightly. I know it could be by some people who just kind of followed that recruitment and haven't heard. No, he's been playing a little bit, when Michigan, I know he's behind Dax Hill at the nickel spot, so he's not going to get much time, but he's contributing already as a true freshman. We'll talk about a decommitment here. This is one that we've hinted at over the last couple months, but Taishan Trent officially is no longer part of Michigan's 2022 recruiting class. 4-star wide receiver out of the Detroit area, Harper Woods High School. EJ, as much as you can say, I guess this one was trending this way for a while and finally kind of ended there. Coincidentally, Michigan State week for an in-state kid, but what can you do?
Yeah, with Taishan Trent, I mean, look, he was always kind of a tweener prospect. So from a talent standpoint, I don't think it's a hit to the class. Of course, you only have one wide receiver commit in Tyler Morris, who's recovering from a torn ACL. So that's not ideal. But there was no guarantee that Taishan Trent was even going to be a wide receiver at Michigan. He ran in the 12s in the 100 meter, I believe a 12-1 or a 12-2, which isn't great. And so I always thought he would be more of a linebacker type or a flex end. I didn't really think he would stick at wide receiver. So there were some things away from the field as well that Taishan had to take care of that didn't end up panning out. So this one was kind of more of a win than if it was going to happen. And Michigan's already kind of moving on to other targets. They are still very much in the mix for Notre Dame commit Amorion Walker, and East Carolina commit Caleb Webb is coming in for an official visit this weekend. I think you might see a few more names pop up late in the cycle on the wide receiver board, but Taishan Trent, no longer a viable option.
Yep, and somebody who is a viable option out of the junior college route, which you don't usually say when it comes to Michigan. It's been decades since they've actually gotten a junior college transfer. But Jeffrey Imba, who was recruited by Michigan from overseas in the past, has a good relationship with Biff Poggi, who's the assistant head coach for Michigan. This could be one where Michigan lands, but Michigan decides to throw out that offer, and there's a lot of interest mutually right away.
Yeah, no, definitely. Really surprising to see Michigan go the JUCO route, but also really exciting at the same time. I covered quite a few JUCO guys during my time on the Texas beat, including some guys at Indy where Imba currently plays, and a lot of these JUCO guys, it's literally last chance you. It's their last chance to do something and get to the next level. And Imba is really excited. He's had a tumultuous path to getting back to the D1 level. He's originally from France. He came over to the United States, tried to transfer to St. Francis under Biff there, and it didn't work out. So he ended up at a boarding school in Connecticut, committed to Virginia, had issues with his transcript, moved to the Congo, ended up coming back to the United States to play for Indy. So it's just been a crazy ride for Imba. So for him to be the first JUCO prospect to earn a Michigan offer in, like you said, decades is definitely a big deal. And as far as him as a prospect, he can still fill a need. Yes, Michigan landed a strong defensive line class last cycle, and they have some really good commits this cycle in Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. But getting Deion Walker on board isn't a guarantee. And I think Imba is a guy that still has, even though he's older, he still has a big ceiling since he hasn't been playing football for very long. And he's a guy that you can kind of plug and play because he is older. He's a little more physically developed. And from my experience covering guys at Indy, they really do a great job of getting guys prepared for the D1 level from a physical standpoint. So I think he can come in and be a contributor as a 3 technique right away. And I feel like Michigan's the team to beat in this recruitment, and he'll be in for an official visit for the game against Ohio State.
Yeah, so that'll be a big one there. Next thing we learned, the Michigan staff hits the road on the recruiting trail, and they were really dispersed all over the country. Jim Harbaugh was on the West Coast, but then he also came back and was able to catch Cass Tech against King, where I saw him and Matt Weiss at that game. Man, they were everywhere. Mike McDonald on the West Coast as well, Sharon Moore out in the state of Washington, but the Michigan staff kind of blitzing the country on its week off. And as Jim Harbaugh described it when he was asked, what are you going to do on this bye week? He basically listed everything you could possibly do as a head football coach: game planning for other opponents, scouting, their own team, doing some self-scout, watching a ton of recruits film, but also getting out on the road. So a super busy week for Michigan. And they also saw some guys earlier on in the season as well, kind of when they had a home game, able to get out to some local games on Friday nights.
Yeah, so, Michigan did have a chance to take advantage of the bye week. We won't go through every single stop that they made, but, starting off with Jim Harbaugh, he made his way to Utah, had a chance to see 4-star linebacker Lander Barton. Barton remains high on Michigan, Oregon, Texas, and Utah, which is probably the team to beat right now. But Harbaugh's invested a lot of resources in the Lander Barton recruitment. He was also out there for a summer satellite camp, so Michigan's still pushing there. Mike McDonald joined him for that visit. And then Harbaugh, like you said, was at Cass Tech King, so he had a chance to see top defensive tackle target Deion Walker, who has kind of been all over the place. Kentucky has really ascended as a major player in his recruitment, but the Wolverines still feel like they can close with him before he puts pen to paper. And then Dante Moore, it's the top overall target in 2023. So great for Harbaugh and Weiss to get a look at him in game. But, sticking with McDonald, like I said, he was out seeing Lander Barton. Then he made his way to my home of Chicago to see 4-star linebacker Jimmy Rolder, who is one of the hottest recruits in the country, racking up a ton of Power 5 offers. He visited Ann Arbor for the game against Northwestern and is at the top of the linebacker board as well. Ron Bellamy made a big swing down south in Louisiana, had a chance to see Notre Dame commit Amorion Walker, who remains a top target at wide receiver and a guy that Michigan's in a strong position to flip. Sean Nua hit the West Coast, saw Michigan commits Mason Graham, Cavante Henry, stopped by Mater Dei, which is home of 5-star USC defensive back commit Damani Jackson. Michigan still working to flip him as well. They saw, basically all the major targets still left on the board, not to mention Sharon Moore, who made his way out to the Pacific Northwest to see Josh Connerly. 5-star offensive tackle that I think Michigan leads for. And then they also, did see a couple of commits that have attention from other schools. Jay Harbaugh was in Idaho, seeing Colston Loveland, who's still attracting interest from Auburn and Arizona State. You had Steve Klinkscale down in Memphis, seeing Cody Jones, who's still receiving interest from schools like Tennessee and Illinois. So keeping those guys on board is important too. The road over the country, including Jim Harbaugh himself. So I think they took full advantage of the bye week.
Yeah, and it's important to note that they were 6-0 at that point and had a ton of momentum, and still the number 7 team in the country and 7-1 right now. But at the point that they were on the road, they surely had quite a lot to sell. The last thing that we learned this month, Michigan expanding its quarterback board, searching for a second signal caller in the class of 2022.
Yeah, so Michigan did kind of circle back to Justin Martin, a 4-star quarterback in California who backed out of his verbal pledge to Cal, but he ended up committing to UCLA. So Michigan offered Bryce Archie out of Georgia, a teammate of top wide receiver target Caleb Webb. Archie coming in for an official visit this weekend, as we first reported, and the Wolverines looking to make a big move. But overall, we talked about it on our recruiting show. So if you missed that, go back and watch it. But it's kind of the nature of the beast with, quarterbacks dropping in and out of the portal. You don't really know, what the status is with Alan Bowman, even though he has a ton of eligibility left. He could be a guy that potentially looks around. Dan Villari was more of a project take in a year where J.D. Johnson had to medically retire. You're putting all your eggs in the Dante Moore basket in 2023. If you miss there's nobody else you're really recruiting with, and you have to play catch up. So taking another quarterback, especially in a cycle where Jaden Denegal is more of a borderline Power 5 prospect that you're taking for the upside, I think makes some sense, especially if it can help with his wide receiver teammate Caleb Webb. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee that Michigan is going to take another quarterback this cycle, but they're definitely exploring that option with Archie at the top of the board.
Yeah, so keep an eye on that and all Michigan football recruiting news over at thewolverine.com. Like we mentioned earlier, we're on the On3 network now, so check that out. $1 gets you an entire year of premium access, including to our message board, The Fort, with thousands and thousands and thousands of Michigan fans over there. Vibrant community with tons of activity over there. Can't keep up with all the different topics that people are discussing, so join us over at thewolverine.com now on the On3 network, and we'll see everybody over there.